He froze. The mop handle slipped, hit the marble floor hard. The sound bounced off the walls and died somewhere in the dark end of the hallway. And Marcus Rivera stood there with his chest locked up and his heart slamming against his ribs, just staring. A silver picture frame, second shelf from the top, between a glass award and a small potted orchid that nobody had watered recently enough. He knew that photograph. Not in the vague way you know a famous painting, the general shape of it, the colors. He knew it the way you know a thing you were holding when your life changed, the way your hands remember before your mind catches up. 11 o'clock at night. The executive wing of Sterling Industries had that particular quiet to it, the kind that presses against your ears. An empty church on a Wednesday. Too clean, too still. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same flat hum that had followed Marcus through 3 years of night shifts, through cold thermoses and aching shoulders, and the particular exhaustion of a man running on willpower and not much else. He was 35 years old. His hands were calloused in a way that said everything without a word needing to be spoken. He had taken the night shift for $2 extra an hour. $2 closer to Emma's surgery. His sister Rosa was home with her right now. Little Emma, 6 years old, asleep with her mother's photo tucked under her pillow like a talisman, the way she had done every night since November. The pediatric cardiologist had been clear about the timeline. Marcus had done the math on a fast food napkin, sitting in a parking lot because he didn't want Emma to see his face while he worked the numbers. The math had not been kind. So, night shift, $2 extra an hour. Marble floors that never got truly dirty because people with marble floors also had people keeping them spotless before the official crew ever arrived. Marcus had decided, on a number of long, quiet nights, that this was either very funny or very sad. He still hadn't settled on which. He pushed his cart past the row of dark glass offices until he reached the corner suite. The light was still on. Elena Sterling, 34, CEO of Sterling Industries, the kind of woman whose photograph ended up in business magazines on waiting room tables in offices far humbler than this one, was still at her desk, at 11 on a Thursday. He knocked. 1, 2. The courtesy knock. Cleaning staff are not permitted after 10. Flat. Not cruel, exactly. Just not interested in discussion. Leave immediately. Marcus pushed the door open anyway. Not defiance, just the discipline of a man who had never once left a job half done. He moved toward the bookshelf along the far wall, reached for his dusting cloth, and stopped. A woman in a yellow sundress, laughing on a beach, sunlight caught in her hair, and the ocean behind her the particular shade of blue that only happens at Cape Hatteras in the late afternoon of a summer day. He had taken that photograph himself. He remembered it clearly because Sarah had made him retake it 4 times. She said she looked like a startled deer, and then laughed so hard at herself that she spilled her lemonade into the sand. Emma had been 2 years old that summer, running in circles at the waterline. His voice came out barely above a whisper. Why is my wife's photo in your office? The most powerful woman in the building had gone completely still. For the first time all evening, she was the one who looked afraid. Elena Sterling did not move. She stared at him. This tired man in gray coveralls with a dusting cloth in his hand. Something shifted behind her eyes, something she covered quickly, the way you cover a candle flame when a window opens unexpectedly. Your wife. Her voice had changed. Not softer, exactly, more deliberate. A member of the cleaning staff is telling me he recognizes the photo on my shelf. I took that picture. Marcus did not raise his voice. He had learned, somewhere in the past 3 years, that raising his voice cost him energy he could not spare. Cape Hatteras, summer of 2018. She made me retake it 4 times. Her name is Sarah Rivera. She passed away 14 months ago. I'd like to know why you have it. Elena stood slowly, walked around the desk, stopped in front of the shelf, and looked at the photograph. The way you look at something you have studied so many times, it has nearly lost its edges, until someone else sees it and makes it sharp again. Sit down, Mr. Rivera. I'm fine standing. I know. She looked at him steadily. Sit down anyway. He sat. She stayed standing, arms crossed, the way a person stands when they are holding themselves together from the outside in. She stared at the window for a long moment. Outside, the city moved through its late evening rhythms, indifferent. Completely indifferent to whatever was happening on the 14th floor. 6 years ago, she said, I was 28 years old, and I was dying. The room shifted. Leukemia. My doctors gave me 8 months with aggressive treatment, less without. We searched every bone marrow registry available, national, international. My family exhausted every resource they had, trying to find a compatible donor. She paused. Money, it turns out, cannot manufacture a stranger with matching cells. She reached out and touched the corner of the silver frame. Just one fingertip, very lightly. Then a young woman came forward, a perfect match. She completed the entire donation process, which is not simple, Mr. Rivera. It is painful. It is long. It requires a great deal from a person's body. She asked for nothing in return. When the registry offered compensation, she declined. When they asked if she wanted to know the recipient, she said, "Seeing a 28-year-old woman get a second chance at life is enough." Marcus's hands had gone very still on his knees. A year later, she sent a handwritten thank you letter through the registry. She included a family photograph. Elena turned from the window and looked directly at him. A woman in a yellow dress, a husband, a baby girl on a beach blanket. She let that land. I kept it because in a world that had shown me very clearly what money can and cannot buy, I needed a daily reminder that genuine selflessness still exists. I kept it so I would not forget. The silence between them had weight. That is Sarah. He didn't say it. He didn't need to. He thought of her at the kitchen table on Sunday evenings with her small blue volunteer binder, updating her schedule in pencil because she liked to be able to erase things. He thought of the winter she quietly gave their good wool blanket to a man sleeping outside the public library. We have the electric blanket, Marcus. We'll be just fine. She came home and never mentioned it again. He thought of the way she hummed while she did the dishes, always the same 3 songs, always slightly off key, and how Emma had inherited the humming, but mercifully not the pitch problem. I plan to reach out to her family after a year, Elena continued, pressing her palms flat against the shelf now. Work consumed the time. It always does. 3 months ago, I finally arranged to find her. That's when I learned she had passed away. She turned back to the window. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing small enough to say. He drove home at midnight with the radio off. The whole way, he kept thinking about that letter. Handwritten. Sarah's looping letters, her slightly right-leaning eyes. She had sat down, sometime in the months after the donation, somewhere between the first test results and the diagnosis she hadn't yet shared with him, and written to a stranger to say, "I hope you are living well. I think about you sometimes." He remembered that period now with a different lens. She had seemed quieter than usual that fall. He had assumed exhaustion. She was volunteering 3 days a week, coaching soccer, helping Rosa move apartments, raising Emma. He had brought it up once, gently, over dinner. She had smiled at him across the table and said, "I'm fine, Marcus. I'm just full of good things." He had believed her because Sarah had always had the particular gift of making the people who loved her believe exactly what she needed them to believe. He had not known then what she was carrying. He was not sure, even now, whether to call it a betrayal or the most extraordinary act of love he had ever witnessed. He suspected it was both. He suspected Sarah had known that too. Rosa had fallen asleep in the recliner with a Hallmark movie playing, one of those snowy, small-town ones where everyone wears matching scarves and finds love by December 24th. He turned the volume down, stood for a moment in the bedroom doorway. Emma was still awake. She had her mother's photo in her hand, clutched tight, the way she held things when she was trying to keep them from disappearing. "Daddy," her voice was thin. "My chest hurts again." "I know, baby." He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed and gathered her up carefully, the way you carry something fragile that you cannot afford to break. She pressed her face into his shoulder. Her breathing was shallow, faster than it should have been. He counted it silently against his own. "I miss Mom." "Me too, Em." He pressed his lips to the top of her head and held them there. "Me too." He stayed until she drifted off. Then he sat at the kitchen table in the dark, hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee he had forgotten to drink, thinking about a woman he had never met. A woman who was alive today because of the person he missed most in the world. He sat there a long time. But Elena had not told him everything. There was a secret she had been carrying for over a year. And when Marcus discovered it, nothing between them would ever be the same. He went back the next evening. He was not entirely sure why. He had enough weight already. Emma's Friday cardiology appointment, Rosa's car that needed new brakes, the building manager's note left in his locker about non-essential extended interactions with executive personnel. That last one was corporate language for "stay in your lane and push your mop." Marcus was familiar with the translation. He knocked on the corner office door anyway. Not the courtesy 1-2, something slower, more deliberate. Elena was at her desk. She looked up, and for just a flicker, the space between one breath and the next, her face did something he hadn't seen it do before. Something that, on another person, might have been called relief. "Mr. Rivera, I want to understand what she actually went through," Marcus said. "The donation. Nobody explained it to me at the time. I want to know what it cost her." Elena studied him for a moment. Then she closed her laptop and folded her hands on the desk. She told him. Bone marrow donation was not like giving blood. No juice boxes, no bandage on the inside of the elbow, no 10-minute appointments. It required weeks of daily injections to stimulate the marrow into overproduction, injections that caused bone pain, headaches, fatigue. It ended with a harvesting procedure that left donors physically depleted for days, sometimes longer. "She told me she had a minor outpatient procedure," Marcus said. His voice was level, not from coldness, from the discipline of keeping it that way. "A vitamin thing. I drove her to the appointment. I sat in the waiting room for 4 hours reading an old magazine about bass fishing because it was the only one left on the table." He paused. "I don't fish." The corner of Elena's mouth moved. She didn't want you to worry, Elena said quietly. No. He let out a slow breath. That was Sarah. Elena rose and moved to the window. The city below had settled into its evening drift. Fewer cars, more lit windows. The particular calm of a Thursday after dark. She stood with her arms crossed. Marcus understood by now that this was simply what she looked like when something mattered. The morning after the procedure, she said, I woke up in the hospital and took off my glasses. She glanced back at him briefly. I have worn corrective lenses since I was 9. Terrible vision. But part of the treatment had addressed an underlying condition. And that morning, she stopped, started again. That morning, I could see the clock on the wall without them. Clearly. For the first time in years, she turned to face him fully. I cried for the better part of an hour. My assistant assumed there had been a medical complication and nearly called the floor nurse. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Quietly, the way ice shifts in early March. She was that way with everyone, he said. She coached the girls' soccer team at the rec center one spring. She had never played a game in her life. Watched instructional videos on her phone every Tuesday night for 2 months so she wouldn't embarrass herself in front of 6-year-olds. He shook his head slowly. She brought extra food in her bag when she took the bus. Just in case someone looked hungry. She never made a thing of it. She wrote about the bus in her letter, Elena said softly. She mentioned that the world looked different to her from the window of a city bus than it did from a car. That you noticed more. Marcus looked at her. She wrote that? She wrote a great deal. Elena crossed to her desk and opened the bottom drawer. She withdrew a folded envelope, worn at the creases, handled many times. She held it out. He did not take it immediately. He looked at it the way you look at something you have been missing, without knowing it had a shape. Then he reached out and took it. The handwriting was Sarah's. He recognized it before he read a single word. The looping lowercase letters, the way she always dotted her I's slightly to the right, the small smiley face drawn in the margin when she was feeling good that day. He had not seen her handwriting in 14 months. He read it standing up. He did not trust himself to sit. When he finished, he folded it carefully along the original creases, held it in both hands for a moment, then looked up. She says she hopes the recipient is living well. His voice had texture to it now, rough at the edges. She says she thinks about her sometimes, hopes she found something to laugh about every day. He cleared his throat. That's very Sarah. Yes, Elena said. I read it every year on the anniversary of the procedure. A pause then. Comfortable, which still surprised him every time it happened in this room. How is Emma? Elena asked. She said it carefully, like someone choosing each word with attention. She's managing, Marcus said. The surgery's been pushed up on the schedule. The billing office says we're current through August somehow. He watched her face as he said it. I've been meaning to ask someone about that, actually. Elena held his gaze without flinching, said nothing. Marcus tilted his head slowly. It's you. Still nothing. But her hands, pressed flat against the desk, pressed a little flatter. Elena? He said her name the way you say something you have been thinking for longer than you realized. How long? She was quiet for a breath. 14 months, she said. She had been watching over his family since before he ever set foot in this building. But the reason she had never told him, and the full truth of what Sarah had hidden, was something far more shattering than anything Marcus had yet prepared himself to hear. 14 months. The word landed between them like a stone dropped into still water. Marcus did not move from his chair. He was very still. The kind of still that happens when a person is recalculating everything at once, reassembling the past year in their mind with new information, finding that it looks completely different now. "You arranged the job posting," he said. Not angry, not yet. Sorting. "I made sure it reached you," Elena said. "You applied independently. HR hired you without any direction from me. I was careful about that." She paused. "I wanted to help, but not by removing your agency. That mattered to me." The billing office. He thought of Paulette. The tabby cat calendar. The monitor she had angled toward him. "You're paid through August." That was you too. Yes. For 14 months. Yes. He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that the fluorescent hum of the office felt loud. "Why didn't you just contact me directly?" he asked. "Send a letter, call the house. Why all of this?" Elena exhaled slowly. "Because I didn't know how to walk up to a man who had just buried his wife and say, 'Your wife saved my life, and I feel responsible for your family now. And I have more money than I know what to do with, and I want to help.'" She looked at her hands. "That sentence has no good version. Every version of it sounds like something that makes a grieving person feel worse, not better. So I tried to help from a distance. A beat. Until I couldn't anymore." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once. Slowly, as though granting her the point, even if it didn't erase the discomfort. "There's something else," he said. Elena looked up. He had been turning it over since the night before, sitting in the kitchen with cold coffee and Sarah's memory for company. The shape of something he had never fully examined, because examining it required him to hold two truths at once: how much he had loved Sarah, and how much she had kept from him. "Sarah was not well when she donated," he said carefully. "She'd been having symptoms for a few months before. She'd had some preliminary tests done. The full results weren't back yet, officially, but she—" He stopped, found the words. "She knew something was wrong. She hadn't told me." Elena went very still. She went through the entire donation process anyway. Every injection, every appointment, every procedure. Without telling me. Without telling the registry medical team about her symptoms. She was afraid that if she disclosed them before the results were confirmed, they would postpone her eligibility. She didn't want to take that chance. The room held perfectly quiet. After the donation was complete, her test results came back. Early-stage cancer. Because of the physical demands of the donation process, the progression accelerated faster than her doctors had anticipated. Marcus's voice was steady, the way voices go steady when a person has rehearsed the sentence in their own head many times. "We adjusted her treatment plan to reduce costs. We were saving for Emma's surgery," Sarah insisted. She sat at the kitchen table and did the arithmetic herself, and she said— He stopped, pressed his hand against his thigh. She said, "Emma needed it more." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, overfull, with the weight of what one quiet, ordinary woman had decided to carry alone. Elena's eyes were bright. She pressed her fingers to her mouth for a moment, composing herself the way you compose yourself when composure is the only thing you have left to offer. "She knew," Elena said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "She knew she was already unwell, and she still chose to go through with it." "Yes, for a stranger." "That was the only kind she helped," Marcus said. "She didn't know how to help people she was close to without them arguing with her about it. Strangers were easier. They couldn't talk her out of anything." Elena made a sound, something between a laugh and something far sadder, and pressed her fingers harder against her mouth. "She gave me my life," Elena said. The composure she had been holding so carefully finally came apart. Quietly. The way real grief moves, not in dramatic waves, but in a slow, private unraveling. "She gave me every year I have had since I was 28. Every morning, every meeting, every decision, every ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday." Her voice broke on the last word. "And she paid for it herself, without telling anyone, without asking for anything." "Without telling anyone," Marcus confirmed. "That was the part that took me the longest to make peace with. Not that she did it, I understand why she did it, but that she carried it alone." He was not crying. He had made a practice of not crying in front of people after Sarah died. Not because he thought it was wrong, but because when he started, he could not always find the bottom of it, and he needed to function. He needed to pick Emma up from school, make dinner, check homework, keep the lights on. Grief, for Marcus Rivera, had never been something he could afford to sit inside for long. But there were nights, usually around 2 in the morning, when the apartment was fully quiet and Emma was deeply asleep, when he would sit at the kitchen table and take the photo of Sarah off the refrigerator. Just hold it for a while. Just hold it for a while. Not looking at it exactly, just holding it, the way you hold something that belongs to someone who is no longer there to hold it themselves. He thought about those nights now, sitting across from Elena Sterling. He thought about the version of Sarah who had known, who had sat in a doctor's waiting room with preliminary test results in her hand and made a decision that most people would never have the courage to make, or the selflessness, or the absolute quiet certainty that another life was worth more than her own comfort or safety. Who had then come home, made dinner, helped Emma with her bath, hummed those same 3 slightly off-key songs, and never said a word. She carried that alone, he thought, so neither of us would carry it with her. He looked at Elena, this woman who had wept openly, without apology, for a stranger she had never met. And something in him shifted. Not toward her, exactly, not yet, but toward the understanding that grief shared between 2 people who both loved the same absence was not a weakness. It was, possibly, the only honest thing left. His jaw was working. His hands, pressed flat against his thighs, pressed very flat. Elena did not try to compose herself. For the first time in all the evenings they had spent in this office, she let herself simply feel it. Fully. Without management. Without her arms crossed against her chest. She sat in the chair across from Marcus Rivera, a man she had met 3 weeks ago, and wept for a woman she had never met. And Marcus, because he had been raised by a mother who believed that the most respectful thing you could do for someone's grief was to simply stay present in it, stayed. He did not offer comfort. He did not change the subject. He sat across from her in the flat buzz of the office lights and was there. 2 people from entirely different worlds, the same loss between them, carried in completely different shapes. Neither of them knew, sitting in that office, that Sarah's kindness had set something in motion that even her death could not stop. Something that was quietly changing both their lives in ways they were only beginning to understand. 3 weeks passed. Quiet weeks, mostly. Marcus worked his shift. Emma had a good stretch. 2 school days in a row with no chest pain, which Rosa celebrated by making her famous oatmeal cookies. The ones with too many raisins. Emma picked them out one by one and lined them up on the edge of her plate like small brown soldiers. Then Elena called. Her own cell number. Not a scheduling assistant, not a calendar invitation from a corporate address. She had scribbled it on the back of a coffee sleeve the week before and pressed it into his hand in the hallway. In case Emma ever needs anything, any hour. Marcus had put it in his wallet and told himself he would not use it. He had been carrying it for 10 days. She asked if she could visit Emma at the hospital during the pre-surgical evaluation.
Emma doesn't know anything about this, Marcus said. About you. About what her mother did.
I understand. I'll be an old family friend. Someone your wife knew, if you're comfortable with that. Nothing more. A pause. I won't overstep.
He thought about it.
He thought about Rosa, who had already declared, twice, in her particular tone of voice that meant the subject was not optional, that Marcus was being the most stubborn man in the Western Hemisphere, and that she personally intended to call Elena Sterling herself if he did not act like a reasonable adult within the week. Saturday afternoon, he said. Elena arrived carrying a children's book about a girl who could talk to horses. A Ziploc bag of orange slices. She had apparently searched, "What do 6-year-olds enjoy as snacks?" and taken the first result with complete sincerity. And an expression Marcus had not yet seen on her face. Open. Slightly uncertain. The way people look when they are walking into something that genuinely matters to them and they know it. Emma studied her from the hospital bed. The thorough, unembarrassed assessment that children apply to strangers. You have really nice hair, Emma said. Thank you very much. Elena sat in the orange plastic chair beside the bed. You have your mother's eyes. She hadn't planned to say it. Marcus could see that from the quick breath afterward, the small flinch. But Emma only tilted her head. Did you know my mom? A little, Elena said. She was very kind to me a long time ago. I've thought about her ever since. Emma appeared to find this satisfactory. She was kind to everybody, she said. The matter-of-fact confidence of someone reporting an established fact. Daddy says so. Aunt Rosa says so. Mrs. Kowalski from church said so at the funeral. She was very loud about it. Something warm moved through Elena's careful composure. That sounds like a lot of people who loved her. Yeah. Emma held out the horse book. Will you read this to me? Daddy does all the voices wrong. He makes the horse sound like it has a cold. Elena took the book. She read for an hour. She gave the horse a voice, confident, slightly theatrical, and Emma approved of it. Marcus could see that this meant something to Elena in a way she would not have admitted out loud. He stood by the window, watched his daughter lean against this woman's shoulder, while the afternoon light moved across the floor. He felt something he did not have a name for yet. Something he was not quite ready to examine. The contract came up a week later. Elena had mentioned, in passing, a $200 million infrastructure project, a regional utility upgrade, reviewed by 3 separate engineering teams, moving toward final approval. She described the load distribution model with the air of someone accustomed to trusting expensive experts. Marcus had listened. Then, quietly, he said the secondary grid would create bottlenecks during peak draw, and he explained exactly why. He drew a quick diagram on the back of a coffee sleeve, because a coffee sleeve was what he had. Elena stared at the diagram. How do you know that? I was a building systems technician for 6 years, he said, before Emma's diagnosis changed the financial picture. She brought her engineers in the following week. They studied the diagram. They agreed with it. The contract was restructured. A significant cost overrun was prevented. Afterward, Elena found him in the hallway and looked at him with an expression he recognized. The look of someone updating their understanding of a person in real time. "You make me feel," she said quietly, "like I don't have to carry everything alone." Marcus looked at her for a moment. "You don't," he said. Then he changed the subject. Because he was not ready for what came after that, and they both knew it. But something was shifting between them, slowly, the way seasons change. Without a single moment you can point to and say, "There, that's where it started." And what Elena was about to do next would either bring them together or push them apart for good. The story reminds us that the most quietly extraordinary people are rarely the ones standing in the light. Sometimes, they are the ones who give their light away without asking for any of it back. Sarah Rivera never saw the ripple. She only saw the stone, and she chose to throw it anyway. This story teaches us that love is not always loud. Sometimes it is a note written to a stranger, a procedure endured in silence, a coat given away without mention. And sometimes, years later, in ways we never planned and cannot predict, that love comes back around and changes everything it touches. This video is a work of fiction, created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration. He found 3 doctors on his front porch on a Tuesday afternoon. Pediatric cardiologists, names Marcus had seen on hospital pamphlets, the kind you fold and fold again in waiting rooms because your hands need something to do. They had equipment bags and the efficient calm of people who had made house calls before. Elena was with them, standing slightly behind, in a dark blue coat that was clearly not her work armor. She looked like someone who had tried to dress like a regular person and was quietly aware she hadn't quite managed it. "You should have asked," Marcus said. "Yes," Elena said. She held his gaze. "I should have. I'm sorry." He stood in the doorway for a long moment. Emma appeared at his hip, silent and sudden, the way small children materialize. She looked at the visitors with frank curiosity. Then she looked at Elena. "Mom, Elena," she said, casual, certain, as if she had decided this privately some time ago and was simply announcing it now. The porch went very quiet. Elena knelt down slowly, her coat pooled around her on the step. She looked at Emma at eye level. Her face, for once, had no layer of management over it, no composure, no careful presentation. Just a woman, kneeling in a doorway, undone by 6 words from a 6-year-old. "May I come in?" she asked Emma softly. Like it was Emma's house to invite her into. Emma took her hand. "We have apple juice," she said. Marcus said no, not that afternoon. That afternoon, he was too startled to say much of anything. He let the doctors in. He stood in the hallway while they examined Emma, drank the coffee Elena made because she had found the coffee maker without being shown, felt an irritation he could not fully explain, and suspected was not really about the coffee maker. But a week later, after the doctors delivered their findings and the surgical schedule was moved up and the paperwork was handled, he found Elena in the building's parking garage. He said it plainly. "I can't accept this. I know it feels that way. Emma already has a mother. She had one, a real one. She doesn't need this." "I'm not trying to replace Sarah." Elena's voice was steady. "I would never try to do that. I don't think it's possible, and I wouldn't want it to be. You deserve someone from your world," he said. It came out with the flatness of something rehearsed. A peer, someone who can meet you as an equal. I'm the man who cleans your building, Elena. That doesn't change because I once drew a diagram on a coffee sleeve. Elena was quiet for a moment. Sarah didn't ask for my tax returns before she helped me, she said finally. She didn't weigh the exchange, or check whether we were social equals, or decide the gap was too wide. She simply showed up and gave what she had. Something moved underneath her voice. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you not to let pride take something good from Emma, from you, from both of us. Because that is not what Sarah would have done, and I think you know it. He walked away. He went home, sat in the kitchen in the dark, at the same table where Sarah had once done the math on her treatment costs, and slid the notepad across to him and said quietly, Emma needs it more. The photo on the refrigerator caught the light from the hallway, the one in the magnetic frame Rosa had given him, slightly crooked because the door had a dent nobody had ever bothered to fix. Sarah, in her yellow dress, laughing at something just outside the frame. He sat there for a long time, long enough that the kitchen clock ticked past midnight, long enough that the refrigerator cycled off and the apartment went genuinely quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens in the small hours, when the whole neighborhood is finally asleep and the world narrows down to just the room you're in and the decisions you haven't made yet. He thought about what Rosa had said to him once, about 2 months after Sarah passed. They had been washing dishes after Sunday dinner. Rosa had said it very quietly, without looking up from the sink. She would hate knowing you were lonely, Marcus. She'd consider it a personal failure. You know that, right? He had changed the subject. But he had thought about it many times since. Because Rosa, aggravating as she was almost never wrong about Sarah. He looked at the photo one more time. Sarah, in her yellow dress, laughing the way she always laughed, with her whole face, nothing held back. Be brave, he thought. Not at himself, at her. The way you speak to someone who is no longer there, but whose opinion still matters more than almost anyone else's. And then, for the first time in a very long while, Marcus Rivera made a decision not based on arithmetic. 3 months later, Elena was hospitalized. Her illness had returned quietly, the way serious things sometimes do. No announcement, no drama, just a shadow reappearing on a scan. Her company's board was managing the news with the particular anxiety of people whose concern was not entirely personal. Marcus walked into her room at 7 in the evening. She was sitting up, hair loose, no composure required. She looked like herself in a way she rarely did in the building that bore her name. He sat down and took her hand, steadily, the way you hold something you intend to keep. You spent a year and a half trying to save my family, he said. Let me try to return the favor. Not because I owe you, because it's the right thing to do. He paused. Sarah taught me that. She taught both of us, actually. It just took me longer to learn it. Elena closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright. Let me be part of your family, she said. Let me help carry what's left of Sarah's kindness forward. Emma deserves that, and so do you. He didn't answer with words. He didn't need to. Emma's surgery was on a bright morning in March. Successful. The surgeon came out smiling. Marcus had been told not to read too much into that. He read everything into it anyway. In the waiting room, Elena sat beside him. He let her. The photo on his nightstand at home is different now. 3 faces. Marcus, Elena, Emma. On a beach, the ocean catching the afternoon light. Elena is laughing. She had asked him to retake it 3 times and then laughed at herself, which struck Marcus as so familiar it made his chest ache in the best possible way. The Sarah Rivera Foundation opened the following year, funding bone marrow registry drives, covering medical costs for families in crisis, running a volunteer program in schools that teaches children what ordinary kindness looks like in practice. Emma helps staff the information table sometimes. She is very good at talking to strangers. She gets that from her mother. This story reminds us that kindness is never truly lost, not even when the person who gave it is gone. It moves forward. It finds its way into silver frames, into night shift job postings, into a small hand slipped into a stranger's on a hospital porch step. The most powerful legacy any of us can leave is not what we built or what we owned. It is the evidence, in the lives of the people still here, that we showed up with an open heart when it cost us something.